Hello and welcome to Once Upon a Nightmare, your horror movie podcast. I am your host Lorraine and I'm here to chat about the fictional horrors of the world with some real horror thrown in. So if I want that true crime fix, I can just find a film based on actual events and chat about that. Still a horror movie.
Loophole!
I have had what some would call an unhealthy obsession with the horrors of the world for well over 30 years now, real and fictional. So if any of that piques your interest, you can find me on your podcast platform of choice. And of course, don't forget to rate and review and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Bye.
This episode is brought to you by the Slash and Cast Podcast Network. Learn more at slashandcast.net.
Hello and welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige. Today's episode, I'll be explaining Clare's Law, the positives and the negatives. I'll also tell you about the story of Rosie Darbyshire. Before we hop into this episode, I haven't done a Patreon shout out in a while, and I want to thank you all so much for supporting me over there and making so many things possible. As of this recording, my wonderful patrons at patreon.com/reverie-true-crime are Angel, TZ, Miss Red, Tyler, Kimberly, Jade, Marianne, Jamie, Sapper, Buffy, Iris, Jimmy, Corey, Joe, Shannon, James, Matt, Liz, Shayna, Ian, Brandy, Chelsea, Maggie, Trevor, Kara, Melissa, and Lorraine. Thank you all so much. On the Patreon, you get ad-free early releases of these episodes, plus a bonus episode every month. For the bonus episode, I post a poll with options such as cases, urban legends, cryptids, and other topics that you all get to vote on, and the one with the most votes will be the episode of the month. There are currently 9 bonus episodes waiting for you to listen to, which began in October of 2020. You'll also receive merch in the mail, and you can send me messages on Patreon for an Ask Me Anything segment. Eventually, I'll start answering your questions through audio or video if we get enough questions submitted. It's $3 a month, and you can cancel at any time. I always pause existing Patreon members' payments in November and December for the holidays because every little bit counts during those times. So if you sign up in October, November and December are free. If you sign up in November, you will have to pay, but December you won't. I know it's a little early on in the year, but I just wanted to give a little heads up on that since I haven't talked about the Patreon in a while. Now, without further ado, let's get into Clare's Law first. Clare's Law is named after Clare Wood, whose story I told in the first part of this mini-series. She was killed in England by her ex, George Appleton, in February of 2009. The police were well aware that George was a dangerous man. When Clare went to ask the police if he had a violent past, they couldn't tell her that information, even though they knew he had a history of violence. Unfortunately, he would end up choking Clare to death and lighting her on fire. When the police were searching for him, they found him days later. George had hanged himself in a bar that had been abandoned. In part 1, I went through George's past and everything Clare had no idea about. Had she known, things would have turned out much differently in my opinion, and I still feel like Clare would be here. I also went into what the Independent Police Complaints Commission said about the police failing her, and they went on to fail many other women. Authorities in England and Wales have always had a history of not doing much for domestic abuse victims. And this could also apply to the USA and other countries as well. When you look at the big picture, police from all over fail domestic violence victims all of the time. Just how they can fail sex workers, people that are on drugs, and or have a criminal record. We are all human and should be treated as such. Investigations are not even up to par a lot of the time, and that is why we see murders be written off as suicide when it's not. It's all very frustrating, but at least Clare's law is a small step in the right direction. When Clare passed away, her dad started to campaign for a legal way that police could tell potential victims of abuse about their partner's violent history. The law was eventually also known as the Domestic Violence Disclosure Scheme, and in other countries they do call it different things. For example, Canada calls it the Interpersonal Violence Disclosure Protocol Act, and a lot of countries adopted Clare's law. In an article in June of 2020, people who live in Saskatchewan, Canada, are able to ask police if the person they're romantically involved with have a history of violence, abusive behavior, criminal convictions, or a history of police just responding to complaints of domestic abuse. The police can even spot you on the street, and if they believe that you are in potential trouble, they can openly tell you this information on their own as well. But there was one problem. The Saskatchewan RCMP, which is the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, is all for this law, but they are bound by federal legislation. Sourcing from cbc.ca from June 22nd of 2020, the RCMP said in addition to looking into the matter, quote, "Early on in the discussions and planning for the implementation of Clare's law, we identified to our partners that there may be some challenges with our participation because unlike municipal police services, the RCMP is subject to federal privacy legislation. The government said that people who don't reside in the big places in the RCMP police communities would have to ask for information from their city's governing body that is closest to them. That municipal office would be responsible for getting the information from the RCMP. Saskatchewan Justice Minister Don Morgan stated to CBC News, quote, "If you are in a community that does not have a municipal police force, the information you may very well need that could save your life may not be available." Of all the Canadian provinces, Saskatchewan has the topmost percentage of domestic violence. In 2015, Saskatchewan had almost 6,000 cases of domestic abuse. Compared to Prince Edward Island, that had the lowermost percentage at 197 per every 100,000 people, Saskatchewan had 666 cases per 100,000 people. Still sourcing from cbc.ca, Joanne Dussel assisted the government in creating Clare's law procedures and is the executive director of the Provincial Association of Transition Houses and Services of Saskatchewan, which help women get out of their domestic violence situations. She said, quote, "I am extremely disappointed that the RCMP has chosen not to participate in Clare's law. We believe Clare's law will help mostly women who may just be beginning a relationship with a partner who has a dangerous history of violence. A spokesperson working for the government did say that Saskatchewan would be the first place in Canada to enforce Clare's law. So anyone that wants data on the person they're talking to or dating won't be given anything on paper, and they can only share the information for their own safety. There is a website for the Metropolitan Police in the UK to fill out a form to request information under Clare's law, which I will be posting in the show notes. There, you will be able to fill out a domestic violence disclosure scheme application. There's also a link in the show notes for Alberta, Canada, and they tell you many ways you can request the information and also have an application you can fill out. The website I'll have in the show notes says, you can apply for information if you live in Alberta, are in an intimate partner relationship, which is a relationship between two people of any gender that is physically or emotionally close or both. That includes current or former dating, common law, and marriage relationships. If you have a reason why you want the information, like fear or worry for your safety or well-being, you must detail why you feel the person of disclosure will cause you harm. You will have to talk to and meet with police to receive the information. Now, you cannot apply to get the information if you have not met the person of disclosure in person, cannot provide a valid reason why you want to get this information, if you want to use the information for malicious intent or other reasons such as a child custody hearing, a divorce proceeding, any other court process, or sharing with any other person. Posted in 2021 on McGinnislaw.com, it says that the government of Alberta recently passed Bill 17, which is the Disclosure to Protect Against Domestic Violence Act, and in parenthesis it says Clare's Law. Alberta has the third highest percentage of domestic violence in Canada. In 2018, almost a quarter of murders in Calgary and Edmonton were thought to be due to domestic violence. Every 2.5 days, a woman or girl is murdered in Canada by a person they trust. This is from McGinnislaw.com, and I'll have the contact information I'm going to read to you in the show notes if you or someone you know needs it. The exact details of the bill is still being determined, but here are a few of the highlights. The right to ask. Anyone who feels suspicious about a partner or potential partner can ask the police to see this individual's criminal record. This will help them determine if this person has a history of domestic violence. The right to know. Police will now be able to disclose an individual's criminal record to people at risk without an application in an attempt to prevent violence. For example, during a suspected domestic violence call, police can later contact the individual to inform them of their partner's abusive past. The right to privacy. Safety will trump confidentiality. However, people can trust that their personal information will be protected and that only certain details will be shared. Clare's Law is expected to come into proclamation in 2020. For more details about the Bill 17, I will have that in the show notes as well. There are going to be so many links in the show notes for you to explore and forms to fill out if you need to, so definitely check that out and please fill out any applications you need to, or if you know someone that also needs this information. It goes on to say, if you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, the government of Alberta has several trained staff and counselors that you can speak to for free. There's also a link where you can talk anonymously online. The Alberta Provincial Abuse Helpline is 1-855, 4-HELP-AB. 1-855-443-5722, and they'll assist you in more than 100 languages from 7:30 in the morning till 8 at night, Monday through Friday. The Child Abuse Hotline is 1-800-387-KIDS. It's 1-800-387-5437, and they are there 24/7. There is also help available at McGinnis Law for a free consultation to get the support that you need to move on. They cover all costs with no fees unless they settle in your favor. On whag.info, which is in the UK, it says, "Can someone else use Clare's Law on my behalf?" The answer is yes. If a family member or a friend is worried about you, they can make an application for information to the police. If the police decide there is information you should know, they will tell you, even if it was someone else who made the application. However, there is another side of Clare's Law that has been talked about, which deals with some women who don't want to know, or they can't go to the police even if they wanted to get the information about their partners for many reasons. They could be scared because their partner may watch and know their every move, and they could be threatened with abuse or death if they ever communicate with the police. And if they get found out and did not have anywhere to go for safety, they wouldn't want to come forward. Also, their partner could be love bombing them and grooming them to the point that it makes it so much more difficult to leave. There are also people who think that Clare's Law is just not great. Some feel that it puts way too much blame on women. Professor Sandra Walkley from the University of Liverpool, who is an expert on domestic violence, stated, quote, "In my view, this law can potentially add to blaming the victim if they choose not to act on the information they're given, and as a consequence, this is hugely problematic." Some people tend to think if the abused could get the information not from the police, but through, let's say, a domestic abuse charity instead, that maybe more women would use the service. However, if these abusive partners do have a record, it can be very useful not only for the abused, but their children, who may or may not be being abused as well. As we know, just being in that environment, it's not good for children, so it can be helpful for men or women with children as well. There's another downside. Since a lot of people do not report their partner's abuse, you could fill out a Clare's Law application and their record could come back clear. But in a situation like that, I think if you feel in your gut that something is off in any way, maybe try to find a safe place and then leave if you can safely. It's better to be safe than severely injured or deceased. So if their record comes back clear, you should always follow your intuition. Look for the red flags that have been talked about in the Casey Brittle and Kelly Ann Bates episode about grooming and how to know if you are in fact being groomed. If you notice these warning signs, I'd urge you to find a way to get out swiftly, but in the safest way possible. Start creating a plan and let someone you trust know your plan so if something happens, they can at least be your voice. It's very morbid to think this way or speak these words, but it's a heartbreaking reality for too many. So, where is Clare's Law or versions of it available? Well, for now, this law is only implemented in Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Newfoundland, Labrador, and Canada, South Australia, and of course the UK. The only other gateways that I could find for people to check if their partner or potential partner has a criminal record is to find court records either online or in person. Visit your sheriff's department and ask if you can search the files for conviction records, pending charges, warrants, arrests. But if the court has sealed the records, you won't get any of that information. You can also check the National Sex Offender Registry as well. You could also go the route of hiring a private investigator. I know that's a really expensive option. At the same time, that could be worth the money, as a very skilled investigator will not restrict their work efforts only looking at conviction records. They'll also observe your partner's conduct for criminal tendencies and check his associates. Hopefully, Clare's Law, or versions of it, will become a law in many more places. Now I have to tell you about Rosie Darbyshire. She used Clare's Law, and I'm going to tell you how the police screwed it up and she lost her life partly because of it. Quote, "They knew each other from college, and he had made her feel good at a low ebb in her life by saying he had always fancied her. She never mentioned him being aggressive towards her. In fact, she said he understood her, that he let her be herself." And that was said by Andrea Darbyshire, the mother of Rosie. Imagine, you are 27 years old, a parent to a child. You want to ensure that you and your child are safe. You just want to prove to yourself and your family that you're right. Your partner is a good person. Now that Clare's Law is in place, you request information to see if your intimate partner has a history of violence. You wait, and you wait some more, unsure of what may or may not happen each day you're waiting for answers. Overall, you think you're probably safe, though you want your family to know that you are too. 27-year-old Rosie Darbyshire was the mom of a little boy named Oliver. Rosie was described as so fun and colorful. When I look at her pictures, she radiates beauty. You can tell that she was so fun-loving. She wore bright, popping eyeshadow, which really brought out her grayish blue eyes. She wore fun wigs. She was talented, a total goofball, and she really seemed like one of the coolest young women. She lived in Preston in Lancashire, and she was called Preston's Sunshine. Rosie was always smiling and would make her presence known when she entered the room. She would belt out a song every time. She was dating a 25-year-old named Ben Topping. Rosie's family told her privately that they had concerns about some things that they had seen and heard. So Rosie went to the police station, wanting information on Ben through Clare's Law. Under the rules, you may get your information quickly, or it could take up to 35 days, which is way too damn long, and mitigating situations may even cause you to wait longer than those 35 days. Ben was out on bond for actual bodily harm. Of course, Rosie had no idea until after she filed to get his information, and he told her he was on bail for ABH. He had beaten a man in the face, breaking his jaw in Pop World, which is in Preston, only 9 months prior. He also had a history of alcohol and drug abuse. Rosie may or may not have known about that part, but she really wanted to prove her family wrong, that he was not abusive and everything was fine. Rosie and Ben had been together for about a month. The two knew each other from college and happened to start communicating on social media. When they started dating, as most do, Rosie was posting pictures of them together on her social media, and people could just look at him and get a genuinely bad feeling. Some said Ben wasn't good enough for Rosie, that she could do a lot better. One of Ben's ex-girlfriends posted on a picture of the couple and wrote, "You'll be next." 4 days go by. A week goes by. And by day 11, February 7th, 2019, she and Ben got into an argument. He was overheard saying that he would punch out every car window in the street if she didn't come over to him, and she was begging him not to hurt her. CCTV video from a shop close by revealed that Rosie tried to run. She fell but got back up, and then Ben tripped her. 11 days after she put in the application under Clare's law, Ben Topping took a crowbar and viciously murdered Rosie right in the street and left her on the pavement unrecognizable and disfigured after being savagely bludgeoned over 50 times. He mostly beat her relentlessly on her head and face. Even after she was clearly unconscious or possibly deceased, he continued to beat her. He caused injuries to her arms and hands, fracturing the bones in her fingers. A couple saw the whole thing happen at 2 a.m, and Ben ran after them to get them to go away. A third witness had the crowbar thrown at them. It was not long after when Ben was arrested, and he spat at the policeman that put him in handcuffs. Rosie was so badly disfigured by this monster, the police thought that she was actually a man when they got to the scene. Also, when they found the crowbar, it had been wiped down and cleaned so well that there was no blood, body tissue, or hair on it at all. At first, Ben told the police he was so drunk that he had no idea what had happened. A month later, March 8th, 2019, there was a gathering at Rosie's home where she grew up. Everyone who loved and adored Rosie brought red roses and covered them all over her coffin. A white horse and carriage carried her coffin from her childhood home. Over dozens of people walked behind the horse and carriage. They were carrying roses, and they had on bright-colored clothes, because that's absolutely how Rosie would have wanted it, because she was such a colorful young woman. After the procession, all of Rosie's family and friends gathered at the Preston Crematorium for a private service where they commemorated and rejoiced Rosie's life. Ben was charged with Rosie's murder. He admitted that he was guilty, and on May 23, 2019, Ben was sentenced to life with a minimum of 20 years. It's a good thing that he at least pleaded guilty so the family wouldn't have to suffer through a trial. He came to court wearing a zip-up sports top and khaki cargo pants. He didn't say a word besides confirming his name, and he was void of emotion as he was sentenced. While sentencing Ben, Judge Brown said, quote, "There is no doubt in my mind, due to the sustained, brutal, and barbaric nature of the attack, there was an intention to kill. It was an extremely brutal and ferocious assault and must have caused extreme suffering to Rosie. It is difficult to envision a more horrific attack on a defenseless person. You are undoubtedly a violent man with a criminal record for violent offenses. The defense team of Benz said that he was sorry for what he had done and how it had affected Rosie's family, especially her son. This is a statement from Rosie's family after the sentencing. Quote, "We are relieved that a guilty plea has been given. No sentence will ever feel enough to show the value of Rosie's life and the loss that we feel. We want to thank the police involved in Rosie's case and the prosecutor. They have treated the case, us as a family, and Rosie's memory with invaluable respect and dignity. Now that we are no longer stuck in limbo, we will try to live our new reality and ensure that Rosie's son lives a happy life and will always share memories of his beautiful mom." Rosie's sister Alice Hodgson said, quote, "We have already had to face difficult milestones, including Rosie's son's birthday and his first Mother's Day without her, and we know that time will not heal or make this any easier to comprehend. It simply should not have happened. We are now forced to adjust to a different life, but we will ensure that Rosie's beautiful soul is never forgotten." Following Rosie's death, her family made a petition that went around and received over 10,000 signatures in 4 months. The petition is calling for faster disclosure when people ask for the information on their current partner or potential partner. It will be reviewed in Parliament if the petition on change.org receives 100,000 signatures. Right now, the petition sits at 15,000 signatures as I'm recording this. I'll have it in the show notes for you to sign, and I'll also post it on the Facebook page, Twitter, and Tumblr. Clare Wood's dad was terribly upset that police seemed to be flat out ignoring Clare's law and said, quote, "I want to see a review of Clare's law and who has decided the 5-week period when these men and women are in clear danger. Rosie Darbyshire's case has highlighted what can happen, but this must have happened more times than enough." Henburn MP Graham Jones said, quote, "I fully support the campaign. Whilst Clare's law is vital, it needs updating to ensure it protects the people at risk. Unfortunately, as Rosie's case sadly shows, the current time frame is far too long." The Home Office has now acknowledged that they need to improve the operation of the scheme. However, I saw in a May 9th, 2021 article, it still states that they aim to get the information to the person who requests the information within 35 days. A spokesperson for Leicestershire Police said the increase in the number of applications in 2020, along with lockdown constraints, added to the delays. Also saying their force will remain to do all it can to support victims of domestic abuse. Rosie's other sister, Eleanor, said, quote, "Clare's law is an incredible thing, but it needs tightening up. It's such a long process, but you see people getting stopped and searched at the roadside, and the police have all the information there and then. Why can't Clare's law be like that? He broke someone's jaw. He was on bail for ABH, so surely it's just a phone call to find that out. We're not delusional. Rosie might not have left him if she'd had the response. She might have decided she was going to be the one who changed him, but she didn't get to make that choice. If this saves a handful of lives, then we need to do it. The campaign is also calling for greater responsiveness of the scheme and for applicants to get a call back within 48 hours. In 2019, Lancashire Constabulary was being investigated by the Independent Office for Police Conduct since Rosie had contacted them before she lost her life. On February 7th, 2020, 1 year after Rosie's death, there was a get-together in remembrance of Rosie. After she passed away, of course, the family took in Rosie's 10-year-old son, Oliver. They all have been loving on him and taking exceptionally good care of him. Also, Rosie's friends created a memorial garden. Many flowers were taken there as tributes. At this time, the family said anyone and everyone was invited to go take candles, glow sticks, and lanterns to the memorial garden that night to celebrate Rosie's life. As always, if you or someone you know are in a dangerous situation, please use the contacts in these show notes to find a possible safe haven and all international hotlines. Thank you so much for listening to this mini-series about Clare Wood, Casey Brittle, Kelly Ann Bates, Denise Skilbeck, Rosie Darbyshire, and Clare's Law. Until next time, please stay safe and take care.